Welcome to the Acorn Land Lab overview course. We've entered a new chapter. We're going to be talking about shelter systems, housing, homes, the places that we live, shelter and how that fits into the off-grid picture, and why off-grid is an incredibly important path forward, especially here in 2023. There are almost as many issues with our current housing system as there are in the current food system. Let me just run through a few observations here. In 2023, the median home cost across many of the states in the United States is between $350,000 to $400,000. Median home price. At a 6 to 7% interest rate, which are prevailing rates in 2023, if your home costs between $350,000 to $400,000, you are looking at paying $1 million or more over a 30-year mortgage. Let that sink in. $1 million or more in principal and interest paid for what is very likely a ticky-tacky builder spec house in the suburbs. There are new builds all over the county here that I live in that are in the $300,000 and $400,000 and up range. These are homes that are made by national builders. Frankly, these homes they're garbage with the quality of materials and the build quality that they're using to create these homes. These homes are on zero lots. There is no room to do any type of projects. These homes are in HOAs. You couldn't set up a garden or have a rainwater collection system or a methane digester, even if you wanted to. Frankly, most of the suburban homes being built today are financial traps. They are not assets in any sense of the word. They're not productive. They are massive liabilities. People think the home values will continue to go up, 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 up. And they might in the short term, but eventually those suburban homes that are on zero lots, built out of cheap builder grade materials, they're going to fall apart. The only valuable part is the land that they're on top of. The actual sticks and bricks of the home is a total liability. So modern homes are oversized, they're energy inefficient, they cost a fortune. They are hyper-regulated in many suburban areas by a zoning industry that favors insurance companies, builders, and having a high tax base. Homes are no longer built to be affordable shelters that are energy efficient, that provide enough space for an affordable amount of money. Housing in the US is so broken, and most of that tracks back to the post-war period when the suburban model was born. The suburban model is totally unsustainable. The amount of money going in to maintain the road infrastructure for suburbs will bankrupt many metro counties over the next 50 or so years. I know our county in particular is $1 billion with a B, $1 billion behind in road work. Our county budget's about $300 million, from what I understand. Our county's still growing. So we're still growing and we're already in the hole on road work. And we're in a Sunbelt city. It's not like I live in Detroit or one of the Rust Belt towns that's just imploded. But these Sunbelt cities will implode in the coming decades financially when they start to level off. These suburban cities can only grow through growth. It's a Ponzi scheme effectively. New subdivisions, new tax bases provide the income to continue to fuel growth that cannot sustain on its own. So issues with housing, you'll continue to hear me say, they come back to one thing primarily. Boom. Issues with housing come back to zoning. Zoning today in 2023 is far more restrictive, far more arcane, far more nonsensical than it ever was in the 1920s, 1930s, or even the 1940s. In this county, I cannot build a home smaller than 1,500 square feet. The home office I'm in right now is 1,200 square feet because it was built in the 1940s. It was grandfathered in. This was one of the only affordable starter homes my wife and I could buy. We put an offer on this home sight unseen because it was one of the only homes that we could feel good about affording. And the home's value has gone sky high since COVID and all the money printing. So starter homes are just not being built anymore. Gen Z and millennials simply cannot afford homes because builders have no economic incentive to build starter homes. Builders only make money when they're making luxury homes. Investment companies, hedge funds, They can only make money when they're building apartments for rent or apartment subdivisions. There are more and more subdivisions going up in our county that are built, bought by an investment bank, and they are rented from day one with rent starting at $2,000 a month. My first mortgage was $1,600 a month. These rents are more than my mortgage. I know many people renting these homes because they don't have any other options. They would love to purchase a home, but they cannot because of the institutional banks gobbling up single-family homes, because of the lack of starter homes, and because any existing starter homes are snapped up immediately. Like I said, this home had 4 offers on it by the time I put an offer on it sight unseen. We were lucky to purchase it. What do you do? If builders don't make starter homes, if builders are only making McMansions with high profit margins, if investment banks are snapping up all the mid-level starter homes, and if apartment complexes are the only small-scale dwellings that are being built, what do you do if you want to build equity and actually have stability and build your nest egg, which has been the traditional vehicle for the American dream, owning some small piece of property and building equity in it? You can't build an off-grid home in this county. Most metro counties will not allow you to build off-grid homes. There is a short list of states that still give you the freedom to build creative structures and off-grid structures, but that list continues to shrink. In some states, there are a few counties left where you can do that. Depending on your situation, if you know of a landowner that already has a principal dwelling, you might be lucky enough to build an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, which can legally be on the property. That could be a tiny house, it could be a yurt, it could be a cabin, but those are more special instances. There is not a scalable, sustainable way for people to build small homes in the 200 to 1,000 square foot range. People can't build those homes legally. It is illegal. We have put so much precedent on building McMansions, big homes, energy inefficient homes, homes built for car-centric suburbs. We are bankrupting ourselves as Americans. And this is happening elsewhere too. In Australia, the problems are similar. In Europe, they're more conducive to smaller homes, but I know home prices are also expensive in many European countries. So, issues with modern shelter. There are so many. For starters, the giant ticky-tacky homes they're building here in my county. Those homes are going for $300,000 to $400,000, and then you've got to pay the energy bill, the gas bill, the water bill, the sewer bill. The home is basically helpless. It can't do any of its own things other than give you shelter from the rain. You're paying for all the utilities. Your home doesn't have any room to grow any food. Your house is totally a financial liability, and because it's made out of builder-grade materials, it'll be garbage in 30 years. We have friends that have bought brand new homes, and the appliances and the components in the home start breaking from day one. There are only 3 or 4 national builders that build the majority of our homes now in the industrial tract housing. Like everything else in our course, you're going to see the patterns that big is effectively bad. Big companies, big builders, big overweighted government, whether it's local or federal, big ag, big energy. Big is all about squeezing little folks and normal folks. This is where creative solutions in off-grid living can give folks like us more freedom, and we have to pursue it while we can. So big systems, like the overbearing zoning systems, are crushing creativity, sustainability, and affordability. If the powers that be truly wanted sustainable options, they would allow people to build creative off-grid homes. That is not the case. So the first thing to do is to research, where can I build off-grid legally? And if you don't want to move to one of those locations like Missouri, Texas, Tennessee, parts of Arizona, New Mexico, certain areas in North Carolina, you really got to do your homework. If you can't build off-grid in an off-grid friendly state or county, how can you build off-grid on an existing property that might already have a full-size house? It is possible. It just takes work and research. We know folks here in Georgia that are building off-grid, but they typically have already bought a property that's larger with an existing home. And that home serves as like a community house or a home base. So beyond homes being built way too large, like for my family and I, we don't need a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot home. We lived comfortably in a 1,200 square foot home. And we got to a point where we were debt-free in this home, which was an amazing feeling. More people should be able to feel what it's like to be debt-free. We can't wait for builders to make affordable homes. They won't. We can't wait for counties to give affordable zoning. They won't. The government and the building companies are not going to create solutions fast enough for us to have affordable housing. I don't want to work to pay off a mortgage for 30 years. I'm confident that I can have other solutions that are more small in scale to be able to pay off my home far more quickly. And I know many young people want to do that as well. Having a giant home in the suburbs is not the American dream for many anymore because it's just a financial trap. So let's run through the key issues here. I'm going to try not to repeat myself too much. Homes are oversized today. They're way bigger than they need to be. Zoning minimum sizes are way bigger than they should be. They say it's for safety. That's not true at all. You can build a perfectly safe 300, 400, 500 square foot home. Modern homes made out of builder grade materials are made out of cheap and often toxic materials with lots of VOCs, glues, plastics. Homes today are built out of very crummy materials. Homes today are built in car-centric suburbs. You've got to buy a car and have car payments just to buy the home in the suburbs. So you're paying for car debt, insurance, heaven forbid you wreck the car and have to pay all that out. You're paying for fuel, you're paying for the suburban home, you're paying property taxes, and you're doing all this with post-tax money. Car-centric suburbs are bankrupting so many folks. It's not an option to have a walkable community anymore because of zoning once again. Giant mortgages. The median home price in 2023 with the interest rates that are prevailing is $1 million for a 30-year mortgage. Homeowners are trapped. You have no choice but to have the corporate job to pay for your corporately produced housing. Homes today are liabilities instead of assets. A home that's an asset would be an off-grid home that collects water through rainwater and wells. It would produce its own energy through methane digesters and solar power. It would grow its own food, at least part of its own food, through gardens, chickens, livestock systems. It would produce not only shelter, but water, food, energy, and sanitation by using methane digesters and composting systems. Our focus on consumerism since the 1940s and 50s has led us down this path where more and more people can't afford a home and they're going broke living in the homes they're in. The acorn home that we dream about is able to provide most of its own utilities and much of its own food. I'll put a link to the Acorn Home article down below. Overregulation and increasing zoning lead to more expenses for homeowners. Building codes are not all bad. Some are there for our safety, but many of them are totally irrelevant and favor the building industry's profits. They favor the insurance industry's profits over human health and well-being and affordability. Increasing property taxes is another element in a car-centric suburb. Property taxes continue to jack up at faster rates, especially since all the money printing during COVID. When money is printed to high degrees like it has been, there's more money floating around for banks to use to purchase properties like the investment banks have done for single-family housing. When that happens, your salary doesn't go up, my salary doesn't go up, but the banks have more money to bid on homes. There's more money floating around to be spent on housing, which jacks up the price of housing. When the price of housing gets jacked up, the county assessors give you higher property tax bills. And that's not even mentioning the need for more car infrastructure, more plumbing, more sewage having to be maintained as counties grow. There is nothing sustainable about the suburbs. All right, so modern housing is the antithesis of sustainability. There is minimal connection to nature. In most HOAs, the reason kids are playing video games is there's nothing interesting to do in their backyards. In our backyard, because we're blessed to be on 2 acres, our kids have chickens and pigs. They're able to enjoy methane digesters because they know what biogas is. They're helping us with compost. They're gardening with us. They're playing with their toys. They can set a little pool out. Children that live in modern suburbs on zero lots are almost forced to stay indoors and play on video games and continue to basically enter the matrix more and more. All right, we've talked a lot about the issues around modern housing. Boom, there goes the thunder again. So the next few sections are going to be all about solutions for modern housing problems. Alternative housing solutions. We're talking about tiny cabins, small homes, tiny homes, yurts, creative housing, temporary housing solutions like canvas tents while you're building your tiny house or your cabin, A-frame cabins, Earthships, Wofatis. There are so many creative solutions, and our local governments make most of them illegal. So I believe more people are going to start voting with their feet. Our family is going to be one of those groups. We're learning about more and more restrictive laws in our community that do not promote affordability, they don't promote sustainability, they don't promote creativity. So we're eventually gonna have to vote with our feet. We're gonna move somewhere that does promote that with more like-minded people. So we wanna be financially free. I do not wanna have to work for some big corporation to continue paying exorbitant taxes, property taxes, income taxes, paying through the nose for vehicles to make that commute. That's another thing about suburban living. You're paying to spend 1 to 2 hours of your life commuting every day. We want to embrace sustainable living, not just because it's sustainable, because off-grid living gives you freedom, it gives you your time back, it helps you to care for the land better, you are able to eat healthier, you're able to save more money, you have a more affordable lifestyle, and become debt-free faster. All right, your actions, what you can do moving forward. Research where you can build an off-grid home legally. I'll put some starter links down below. Look at your local zoning. Can you build an off-grid home legally? If you wanted, could you build a tiny house or a yurt or a cabin? Could you build an Earthship or a Wofatis? If you're within 50 miles of a major city, I'm gonna guess no, you can't do any of that legally. Can you even capture rainwater legally where you live? If you're in Colorado, you might not be able to. Write a letter to your zoning board to encourage legalizing these types of homes. Legalize tiny homes, legalize yurts, legalize Wofatis, legalize Earthships, legalize small 500 square foot A-frame homes. There's nothing wrong with these solutions. This is how we tackle the housing affordability crisis if the powers that be want to tackle it. Many of those in power do not want to make more affordable homes. There's too much money to be made off of unaffordable housing. Research your local zoning laws to understand what the minimum square footage is required in your county. Can you even build a home that's not connected to public utilities? You might be shocked to find out you can't do any of that. Look up the housing cost increases since the 1970s. That era, the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, it was so much more simplistic to build your own home in many of the American suburbs. Since then, the NIMBY, not in my backyard mentality, has prevailed. Regulations have gotten so much more intense, and that has led to skyrocketing prices. We're in deep trouble with housing affordability, but the solutions are so simple, and we're going to dive into so many of those solutions over the next few videos. Today we're going to be talking about tiny homes and cabins in particular. We've got a booming thunderstorm outside. You might hear some of those thunderclaps, so just bear with me. The power might flicker, but we're going to continue on. All right, so I started building my first tiny home when I was 23 years old. I had paid off my student loans. I had saved up some money and bought a piece of land. It was a rough piece of land. It was 7 acres on a river. The river was fairly polluted, and the land had been logged. The lady that owned it before me sold the timber rights to some company for $2,000, and they cut down all these gorgeous trees. Total shame. But I purchased the land from her after I saved up some money working during college. And then I wanted to build a debt-free tiny house. At the time, I didn't even know that it was illegal to build a small home like that that's off-grid in my county. I didn't know about those zoning laws. That's tremendous. You gotta research zoning laws before you start sinking money into property and tiny homes, cabins, tents, yurts, you name it. But I built the shell of the tiny house with my bride-to-be. We were engaged. We built the shell for about $10,000 to $15,000. We didn't have the inside finished out. We got married, and by training, I was a software engineer. I had graduated school. I was not a carpenter, an electrician, a plumber. I didn't have any skills in the trades. I was watching YouTube videos. And a lot of the systems that we use now at Acorn Land Labs did not exist back then, like home biogas or Ghost Sun ovens. And if they did exist, I hadn't heard about them. I know a lot of those projects have been crowdfunded and developed in recent years. We had the shell of a tiny house. We had 45 watts of solar panels and a small battery pack. We did not have rainwater collection set up. There was a well on the property, but it was a shallow well, and we didn't have a pump system installed yet. So we're newly married. We just thought we were gonna live in the tiny house and finish it out as we went. Well, down here in Georgia, we had another thing coming. We got married in summer, and it was such a roasting summer. We did not have AC, the plumbing wasn't finished, the electrical wasn't finished. We lasted 5 nights in that tiny house. It was a hot box. And then because the tiny house wasn't totally sealed in yet, she got bit by an ant or a wasp in the middle of the night, had an allergic reaction. We end up in the ER, and I realize we are not ready. I have not gone about this project the right way. And that's been a big reason we started Acorn Land Labs, so you could learn from our experiences and not do what we did, go about these projects the right way. The tiny house had been paid for, cash, the land was paid for, we were debt-free, but we didn't have systems that were properly functioning to sustain us healthily. We were getting sick because it was so hot out there during the summertime. We were running a small online Etsy business, producing rubber stamps. We made enough money to live, not a ton. I knew I didn't want to go back to corporate America, but because I had interned and then worked building software for commercial applications, but we weren't ready. It wasn't time to go off grid yet. I didn't have the skills, didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the systems. So we ended up getting a mortgage, bought a home, I got a job in the city, we regrouped. We still had the tiny house, we still had the land. So planning is critical for a tiny house build, a yurt build, a cabin build, a glamping tent build, an A-frame, a Wofati, an Earthship. I'm all about jumping in head first, but make sure you've got backup plans. Make sure you've got the funding. Talk with people that have done it. Talk with people that have experience. Watch courses that go step by step by step through the process. Build your budget, build your forecast. Because if you don't, you could end up slowing down your dream, slowing down your process. With all the systems we have now, between rainwater collection, solar generators, methane digesters, solar ovens, solar-powered refrigeration, we could have gone off-grid easily back then with the knowledge and the systems that I have now. Hindsight is 2020. That's why we're building this course to introduce you to these concepts. So you've got the toolkit to build the system you're dreaming of affordably. So benefits of tiny homes and off-grid cabins. Many of these are obvious, but we're going to list them anyway. Debt-free living. If you're just a 1 or 2 person household and you build a 200 square foot tiny house, you could build that tiny house for, on the low end, 5 to 10 grand using reclaimed materials. On the high end, $60, $70, $80,000. You could have a home like that paid off lickety-split. The key is to buy the land under the home. It's fine if you know a landowner that you trust, but it's not the tiny house that appreciates in value. The tiny house is just like a car or an RV. It's going to break down over time. Maintenance is critical, but it'll still break down. So that's a depreciating asset. The land is what appreciates in value. So you want to own a few acres under the tiny home or the cabin and own the tiny home. That's how you build wealth. So beyond building debt-free lifestyles faster, tiny homes and small cabins are great to minimize your ecological footprint. I honestly don't lead on this. I want to be a good steward. I want to be sustainable. But I'm doing all these projects first and foremost to get more time with my family, to live more affordably, to be closer to nature, and then to be sustainable. All 4 of those are key aspects for me. But minimizing my ecological footprint is not the first reason I do all this. It's just an awesome byproduct. Permaculture integration. Tiny homes can easily be integrated into passive heating and cooling systems, whether that's passive home design, planting trees around your tiny home, having shade systems, geothermal cooling, or having a few solar panels to power an AC unit. That's the most common and viable way. The smaller the space, the smaller the dwelling, the easier it is to power your home off solar and a small wood stove. Energy efficiency. Smaller spaces are so much more energy efficient for heating with biomass, heating with passive design, cooling with passive design, cooling with a small heat pump or AC unit. It is way more feasible for a small tiny home or cabin to leverage renewable resources. It would cost a fortune to heat and cool a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot suburban home with renewable resources. It's basically an oxymoron. That much space would take $80,000 worth of solar panels to heat and cool. That's just not feasible if you're trying to live affordably. Closer to nature. Our tiny house on the Acorn Land Lab is embedded in the gardens. It's embedded with the greenhouses. You've got these big trees around you. It is a much better way of living than living in some denuded suburban landscape where they clear cut, smacked a giant sticks and bricks home down, and stuck a few twiggy trees as landscaping. Freedom of movement. Tiny homes can be built on wheels. You can move them around. That's a pretty awesome feature. Tiny homes are really no different than RVs. They're just heavier and more durable. So because of that, you don't want to move them as frequently. All the framing and the siding and the interior cladding, it's going to make your fuel bill a lot higher moving the tiny house. And you don't want to have stress on the home by moving it all the time. Some people do, and you can over-engineer yours, but we recommend keeping your tiny home in place for a few years at a time. Simplified lifestyle. Less space means you're going to buy less stuff. We can clearly see that things are not the path to happiness. Check out the minimalism movement. There's all kinds of great documentaries on minimalism now, and no doubt there's a trend aspect to it. You have a more simplistic, affordable life when you have less things. You don't own your things often end up owning you. So a tiny house is a great way of preventing over-purchasing of things. Community building. Community might be the most important concept of this course. Community and permaculture together. You can have all the cool tech to live off-grid. You can have the garden. You can have all those systems. But if you don't have a strong community, you're still poor. Having community is where you build that richness. I could never run all these systems solo. It takes my wife, it takes our boys, it takes all of our team, from Ben behind the camera to our garden director and Joe at the videos. And there's so many more people connected beyond those folks. Community is key to affordable, resilient living. So what's better than one tiny house or one cabin or one yurt? 10 of them. That is the real life hack. That is the real secret for building an affordable community. Getting a group of folks together to crowdfund a piece of property and then subdivide it, split it up, so everyone's got their own piece of property. Because this is not a cult, it's not a commune, it's an off-grid subdivision. That's what you want to build. So community building is a huge aspect to tiny homes and off-grid cabins. Reduce stress and overhead. Small spaces require less time and effort for cleaning and maintenance. I want a home that's the right size to have our clothes and to have a little tiny kitchen, to have a place to relax, to have air conditioning, to have heat in the winter. I don't want to live like a caveman. My wife would not let us live like cave people. And being parents, we want to be responsible and provide everything our kiddos need. But we don't need 3,000 square feet to do it. We don't even need 2,000 square feet to do it. You can build a small home that meets all of your needs, and you'll find yourself traveling more, living outdoors more, spending more time on the porch, spending more time in the garden, spending less time on Netflix and Facebook and all these virtual worlds that really provide no long-term lasting value. Promoting creativity. Designing and building a tiny home or an off-grid cabin gives you so many chances to build skills and problem solve. Permaculture integration encourages creative solutions for sustainable living. I have learned so many things in all the off-grid build projects that we've been tackling. I love working with my hands. I'm a computer scientist, I'm a software engineer, but I love to balance my digital work with physical work, whether it's making compost, swinging a hammer on the tiny house, setting up rainwater catchment systems, setting up solar panels. I think the future is going to be in the hands of people that can use their mind and use their hands powerfully together. You need a strong mind and a strong body. You have to exercise both. Inspiring a mindset shift. This might sound cliche, but many people live in the matrix. I no longer want to live in the matrix. I don't want to eat industrial food from fast food restaurants, take that home and watch Netflix for hours on end, go work my corporate job, and find myself completely and utterly dependent on all these external, centralized systems that take advantage of people and take advantage of the environment. I don't want to support that system. I believe we're seeing a rift in society. People that recognize there is a natural, organic, healthy, local way of living, a community-based approach that humans have relied on for thousands of years, and there is the modern machine, which is simply not healthy for humans. It is meant for corporate profits. It is meant for automation, efficiency. There's nothing sustainable about it. It is not meant for thriving. People will either support the organic garden environment, the organic way of living, the organic way of having community, or they'll support the corporate machine. And that divide is going to be more and more clear in the decades to come. I, for one, want to support the small, local, off-grid movement with tight-knit communities that produce a lot of their own food, harness clean, renewable energy, have freedom to build what they want, where they want, rather than have this overbearing corporate, high-regulation, high-tax environment that stifles creativity and ends up making people subservient to big corporations and profit-driven agendas. All right, stepping off the soapbox, tiny houses and cabins. Finally, they encourage mindful consumption. Living in a smaller space encourages you to focus on the necessities. So there are so many plans for tiny homes and cabins. You can build them out of brand new materials. You can build them out of reclaimed materials. I'll add some links below to some of the websites where you can get plans. There's a lot of free plans too, or you could design your own. I really love the Pin Up Houses website by Joshua Woodsman. We'll be building one of his designs later this year. He's got some great off-grid cabin designs. Tumbleweed Tiny Homes is one of the first designers that I caught on to. I believe they're still out there, but I'll add links for all that. Next items you can do. Go visit a tiny house near you. Search on Vrbo or Airbnb. Go rent a tiny house for a night or two. See if it's for you. Don't decide to build a tiny house if you haven't lived in one for a night or two. You need to make sure it's a good fit. Research tiny home plans. Find your dream design. What would you build and where could you legally build it? Make a budget to see how much you need to save up to build your tiny house. You could use reclaimed materials, new materials, a mix of both. Research zoning for tiny homes. Can you build legally where you are? Can you even build legally in your state? Or would you have to move elsewhere to do so? Today we're talking about yurts and canvas tents. I love yurts and canvas tents. I don't have a yurt yet. We don't have any yurts for the Acorn Land Lab saga, but we do have a canvas tent that we absolutely love. We put that on Airbnb for a while and guests ate it up. We had a canvas outhouse, we still do, with a Nature's Head composting toilet and a sink that you use your foot to pump water. It's pretty cool. And then the canvas tent had a blow-up mattress. It has got connection to our home power supply. We've got solar in the back and then a battery system. And we've got lights strung up around the canvas tent. It's got all the essentials for cooking over the fire. It's got your coffee maker. It's set up as a short-term rental. But you could totally live in a canvas tent, and many people do, while they're building their bigger home, whether it's a tiny home or an off-grid cabin, A-frame, Earthship, Wofati. Some people even live in canvas tents full-time. If you get a fly for the tent to really weatherproof it, because sunlight and rain will eventually wear out the canvas, the UV rays will destroy the canvas fibers after a while. The canvas tent we have was about $1,200, and it is such a high-quality tent. I mean, people hear tent, they think of those cheap, crummy, like Coleman tents. This, our canvas tent is a white duck tent. We absolutely love it. If we didn't have 2 kids, I could totally see my wife and I living in it while we finished the tiny house project 10 years ago. Now, we didn't really have the foresight to think through that, but that totally could have been possible. So canvas tents and yurts are fabulous off-grid shelters, especially for temporary situations where you're building a bigger structure, because they're affordable. You can get a high-quality canvas tent for $1,000 and sometimes less. You can get a great yurt for $7,000, $8,000, $10,000. Yurts are like tiny homes. They can be as expensive as you want them to be, but you can get a great yurt set up for 10 to 20 grand. One of my favorite aspects of tents and yurts, I love everything compostable. I am addicted to composting. The idea that you could have a home for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and obviously keep fixing it up, but if the tent or the canvas yurt has truly worn out after like 40 or 50 years, it's made of wood, it's made of canvas. You can compost the whole thing. Granted, you want to check and see if there's any kind of like fire retardants or other chemicals, but these are structures made out of natural materials, which makes them so much more sustainable than most living systems. I think in our modern world, we often forget that humans lived in tents, teepees, and yurts for hundreds, if not thousands of years. From the nomadic tribes in Mongolia to the Native Americans and so many other people groups worldwide have relied on tents, yurts, and teepees as a full-time way of living. I think so many people today that are month to month in their apartment, commuting to work, they just dream about living in a tent, being nomadic, going from place to place, seeing new sights, and eating off the land. I'm not saying it was an easy life. I'm sure it was not. But I know it had its own unique joys. I think we need to bring back tent living, canvas tents, and yurt living. And many homesteaders are doing exactly that. Yurts and tents are one of the most affordable, sustainable ways of getting your foot in the door for off-grid living. So let's run through some of the benefits. Affordability and cost effectiveness and sustainability. It's a compostable home. Yurts and tents are more budget-friendly than most traditional housing structures. And they're very portable. It's great for setting up a temporary home if you're not sure where you want to plant your final off-grid home. Low environmental impact. They're made out of canvas. Tents are made out of natural materials. Yurts are made out of natural materials. Wood, cotton, fibers, sometimes hemp. So if you really want to make sure your environmental footprint's small, canvas tents and yurts are fabulous. Natural ventilation and comfort. In the springtime and the fall, our canvas tent is my favorite place to be. You can see the sunlight hitting the tree leaves, leaving the shadows on the tent wall. The airflow and the breathability of the tent is fantastic when the weather is right. And when it's cold, we can put a heater out there or a small wood stove. When it's hot, we can put fans out there or a tiny AC unit. Adaptability and mobility. Yurts and canvas tents are so portable, fostering flexibility. You can move it where you need to. If you sell the land, take the tent or the yurt with you. Close connection to nature. Living in a yurt or a canvas tent provides such a unique opportunity to immerse yourself in nature. I don't think we've scratched the surface on how healing being in nature is. The Japanese have the concept of forest bathing. I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but shirin-yoko, bathing in the forest. Being in the woods, being outdoors, grounding, spending time near running water has so many health benefits. If you're living in a tent or a yurt, chances are you are closer to nature because you are in the woods or near the woods, living in your off-grid abode. Permaculture integration. Tents and yurts can be integrated into permaculture designs, utilizing space efficiently for your off-grid setup. There's the cultural and historical significance. We need to get back to our roots. Let's do more tent and yurt living. It's freedom, it's affordable. You are giving up some conveniences, there's no doubt about it. There's no perfect silver bullet, but our ancestors definitely lived in tents and yurts for thousands of years. Reduced overhead costs, educational potential. Being able to teach your kids or friends and family about what's possible in a tent or a yurt. And I don't think I'd live in one full time unless it was a pretty good sized yurt, but temporarily while building a cabin, I would totally live in one. Let's see here. Finally, there's just the ability to be able to have a structure you can put on Airbnb or Vrbo as an income stream. Once you build your regular sized cabin, put your tent or your yurt on Vrbo or Airbnb, start generating income to help pay your property taxes or other costs of your homestead. Your next actions: go stay in a yurt or a canvas bell tent at a state park or Airbnb or Vrbo. Research the costs if you want to buy a small piece of land to live in with your own yurt or canvas tent. Make a list of the off-grid systems you would have in your yurt or tent: food, water, energy, heating, cooling, sanitation, and food systems. Today we're talking about Earthships, Wofatis, and shipping containers. These are the eccentric homes for off-grid living, the eccentric homes for more sustainable, debt-free living. So because this is an overview course, we're going to hit all three of these in this video, talk about some of the pros and the cons, the processes involved, where these concepts originated from. Let's start with Earthships. So Earthships were designed by a gentleman named Michael Reynolds. Michael continues to design Earthships. That is effectively his brand name for this housing style. It's basically, you can think of it as a hobbit hole that is made out of earth and tires. So it's made out of trash to some extent in the backfill with all the tires. I don't know that hobbits would love that concept. It's a little anti-hobbit. But what's cool is the tires are able to form a solid back wall and side walls filled with earth and rubble and rock. So Earthships are great for sequestering materials that won't break down for thousands of years. On one hand, that is a concern. There's more folks that have asked the question, how healthy is it to have tires in the back of my home? It really comes down to how well you seal all that off. Our modern homes in the suburbs are made out of many different products that have toxic glues, VOCs, various adhesives, that off gas. So I personally wouldn't be too worried about the tires in an Earthship as long as you've properly sealed them with concrete in the back, because it's a great way of bulking up mass to build your underground home, which is effectively what an Earthship is. The Earthships, and we'll throw some photos in the video as well as links down below, Earthships are often oriented towards the sun to take advantage of passive heating, and they've got roof pitches to be able to deflect summer sunlight when the sun is higher in the sky. In the wintertime, the sun is lower in the sky, so sun rays come straight through windows to give more passive heating for the home. What's amazing about homes built into the earth is they require less energy to heat and cool because the earth maintains an ambient temperature. That temperature can range between, I believe, 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll put some exact numbers down below. But when you build an underground home, an Earthship, a Wofati, you are using the thermal inertia of the earth to provide more of a stable temperature for your home, which is incredible. Now, there's challenges to building in earth, particularly around water seepage, and mold. Those challenges can all be overcome, but it takes planning and you have to design your structure properly. So Earthships are great because they can be affordable. Many of them end up being fairly expensive if you're going to finish them out with really high-end materials, really great glazing, a tin roof in the middle for rainwater catchment. But Earthships, the whole concept is it is kind of like a living system in a box. It's capturing rainwater. It's performing more of the heating and cooling for you passively. Many people grow produce and vegetables to some small extent in the passive greenhouse area at the front of an Earthship. So between water catchment, providing some energy needs with the passive heating and cooling, providing shelter, many people in Earthships are using composting toilets or something similar. The Earthship brings a lot of those systems you need into one package. So an Earthship utilizes recycled and upcycled materials like tires, bottles, and cans. It's got the passive design, got rainwater harvesting. It is very popular in the self-sufficiency permaculture worlds. All right, have we missed anything on Earthships? That's it in a nutshell. The biggest plus to Earthships is they minimize your dependency on utilities and energy inputs. Now, one of the biggest challenges with Earthships, just like all the other creative small homes or eco homes, it's zoning. Good luck building an Earthship in Metro Atlanta or somewhere around Dallas, Texas. You've kind of got to go out farther into the boonies to build an Earthship. I believe some people have got them permitted, but that takes a lot of effort and time. So Earthships are an amazing option, but once again, zoning is the biggest roadblock. You'll hear that again and again in our series. Zoning is what hangs up most of these creative ideas. So it's high time for all of us to be writing letters to our boards of commissioners, the county zoning board, to let them know we need wiggle room. We need experimental zoning to allow for some of these creative ideas as housing continues to get more and more expensive and out of reach for many, especially Gen Z and millennials. So the cousin of the Earthship is an even cheaper home to build. This is one I'm really excited to try building one day on our 7-acre land lab. It's called a Wofati. The Wofati name was coined by Paul Wheaton. Paul Wheaton is one of my favorite personalities and leaders in the permaculture homesteading world. Paul Wheaton has a software engineering background like myself, so I can relate to that. And now he's all in on these low impact, low technology ways of living sustainably and affordably. So Wofati stands for Woodland, Euler, Freaky Cheap, Annualized Thermal Inertia. Let's unpack that. These Wofatis are designed to be built onto the side of a small hill or a mountain or slope facing southwards if you're on the northern hemisphere. You want your Wofati to face the sun as the sun is tracking across the sky, just like an Earthship. You effectively dig out a hobbit hole. You have 2 berms of earth on the sides. Then you lay down a water barrier, kind of like a skirt, so that water is going to flow away from your structure. And the placement of earth and the orientation of the Wofati are all very important aspects to make sure water doesn't seep into your home and that you collect as much passive solar heating as possible during the winter months. So Paul Wheaton recommends that you're building your Wofati in a woodland area because you need wood. You need timbers to be able to build the sides and the front of the Wofati building because often you're using round poles. So these seem to be more popular out in his neck of the woods, Montana and out west in the Pacific Northwest. I haven't seen any Wofatis in the Southeast, but it doesn't mean we couldn't build one. Mike Euler, is the gentleman that came up with the original concept of these earth and underground homes. Paul Wheaton did not like the idea of an underground home. That term's very off-putting for many of us. So he updated it to Wofati. So you're building this hobbit hole-like structure in a woodland on a slope facing south. You've got the water barrier, which could be something like a billboard tarp or other impervious surface, like a vinyl sheet. That goes down. Then you put more soil on top of that, and you've put the roof on your Wofatis structure. So it's basically a wooden box with earth on left and right, and you've got these pilings or these wooden poles in the front. You've got glazing and windows to accept the solar heat, and then you put more soil over a final layer of vinyl or billboard tarp. By sandwiching all that earth material between a lower water barrier and an upper water barrier, you're able to use that thermal inertia to help passively heat and cool the home. Well, reduce your heating and cooling needs, that is. So Wofatis, just as a recap, developed by Mike Euler and improved by Paul Wheaton. It's a blend of earth-sheltered and passive solar design. It utilizes logs and dirt for insulation and temperature stability. It's low cost, energy efficient. It integrates with permaculture principles really, really well. When you're done with the home, I mean, you pull out the vinyl sheeting and the home goes back to the earth. It's soil and timber. It offers natural heating and cooling, promotes self-reliance, and encourages efficient use of local resources. So, just like Earthships, Wofatis, very difficult to permit in an urban or suburban environment. But a Wofati, if you build it yourself, could be one of the cheapest off-grid homes you could build. And the examples Paul Wheaton has look really cool. So we're excited to build one of these one day. Container homes, repurposed shipping containers for housing. In the mid-20th century, shipping containers came onto the scene and revolutionized global commerce. Back in the day when sailing ships moved goods and machines and commodities, every package used to be a different size and shape. You could have, giant bales of cotton. You could have big metal machines boxed up. There was no standardization. When shipping containers were standardized into TEU, 20-foot equivalent units, I believe the term is, shipping containers exploded global commerce. So there's different sizes of standard shipping containers, but when they reach the end of their life, they're often very cheap to purchase. You can purchase a used shipping container for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Often you want to spend a little bit more so you don't get one that's rusted out. But the shipping containers are readily found near major ports in America. We live just a few hours away from the port of Savannah. So we could go down there and pick up a shipping container to build a shipping container home pretty easily. Now, we're closer to more industrial parks as well here near Atlanta, so we wouldn't even have to travel that far. But shipping container homes have become popular because the shipping container provides the actual structure for the home. Now, you need to make sure it's something that fits your lifestyle because it requires specialized tools to build a shipping container home, cut all the metal parts out. You really are limited on space. You can make them modular and add on. You can certainly expand upon them, but you are really locked into that shape of the container home. There have been a few issues around just heating and cooling the homes because you're living in a metal box. You have to be very thoughtful about how you implement your heating and cooling systems. You very likely want to place it in the shade so that it doesn't become a hot box in the summer. But it can be a very affordable DIY way of building an off-grid home. There are some phenomenal shipping container home plans on Pinup Home Designs. I'll post a link down below. One of my friends designed a 3 shipping container home here in Georgia. He used 2 shipping containers for the base as the feet, and then he got a crane and lifted a 3rd shipping container on top. Now he had a company professionally finish out the top shipping container. It had the mini washer, I believe it had washer, dryer, dishwasher, sink, bedroom, all those elements. It was finished out very well on the inside, and I think he spent somewhere between $80,000 to $90,000 on it. So he got a higher end shipping container home. But the 2 containers in the bottom, they finished out themselves. They used those for the baby nursery and then the storage and then his office space. And they enjoyed living in there for a few years. The home design was gorgeous. So he did that on the higher end of the spectrum, but you can tackle a shipping container home very affordably. Once again, even though he was in more of a rural zone, he just built his shipping container home. Didn't take long though for the county assessors to find it using either satellite maps or some other technology, and he ended up in all types of paperwork and lawyers had to be involved. Eventually the county back permitted the home after inspections, but the county gave him a tremendous headache sorting through the process. And he's a tradesman. He has all types of building contacts. He's able to build a rock solid home that is higher quality than many of the sticks and bricks ticky-tacky homes being built now. But because he didn't go through the zoning process, he had a massive set of headaches with the county, which is just a good example for why you need to know what you're getting into. You can roll the dice and try to build, but chances are the county's going to find out, and that could create more problems on the back end. It's frustrating, but it's just a reality we deal with. Shipping container homes are very modular, very customizable, and they can be cost effective, especially if you DIY. So next actions for you. Plan a trip to visit an Earthship. I don't even know if there's any Wofatis on Airbnb. I'm going to go check, and if I can find one, I'll put a link down below. But if you can stay in an Earthship, a Wofati, or a shipping container home, go check it out. See if it's something that's for you, because it might give you inspiration for what you want to build and live in down the road. Check out Wheaton Labs. Paul Wheaton's work out there is phenomenal, and he hosts workshops. If you can't go stay in a Wofati, go check out what Paul Wheaton is doing. You might be able to stay in one of his Wofatis, if you ask nicely. Don't hold me to that. I don't know Paul Wheaton, but he seems like a pretty gregarious guy that likes teaching people and showing people out there. I'd love to visit Wheaton Labs eventually. Final question. Would you and your family, or just you, live in a hobbit hole? Would you be interested in that? And if you could, where would you go build your hobbit hole? All right, that's it for now. I'll see y'all in the next video.